What's up, gang? Bart from TST Industries here. I have an installation video for you guys today, but here's the deal. Unless you hit this link here, you will not know what these parts are all about. If you've already watched our TST Industries WORX Race Pack video, then you will know what these parts are, how they were designed, what they do. In this particular video, we'll show you how to install them on the first and second generation Yamaha YZF R3. It's pretty simple and straightforward. I will not be doing a lot of commentary. Typically, we get into very nitty-gritty detail with all the tool types and shapes and sizes and all that stuff. Here, I'm relying on you already having enough aptitude in turning wrenches to be able to perform this. Now remember, this is not a street legal setup in the United States. So it was designed basically for the track enthusiast and racer. Keep that in mind. If you choose to take this stuff on the street, it is on you. So I don't want to hear the problems with cops. Anyway, as you see here, we have our Superbike R3 that we've built over the years. This is where all this technology came from. It trickled down from all the research and development that we've done on this bike. And then subsequently, we've made all those parts for you to enjoy on your race bikes. Here you see a 2020 MOTO3. All these parts actually fit on this bike and they work the same way, but it's a naked bike. It's a street going bike. I don't know what you would do with that pack on this bike. It does fit. One nuance is you will have to trim the lower belly cover to allow space for your header. But again, that is up to you. We live in a free country. You put this stuff on, if you take it on the road, it's on you. Anyway, those are all the warnings. We have a lot of fun with these things. I have a lot of fun wrenching them. I hope you enjoy this video. We love making them for you. And again, if you haven't seen the first part, it goes over all the part parameters. Here's the link again. Enjoy. See ya. After the screws are out, we'll have to stretch this panel, push this forward, same on the other side, and tab it out towards the rear. This under tank panel has multiple friction fasteners that go into grommets straight inboard. We'll have to pry them out. Get your hand under here. Pop it out away from the center plane of the bike. And then ideally clear this tab out this way. Mine actually popped out a little early. Same procedure on the other side. Now we need to take these panels out, 2 4mm screws from the top, but more importantly from the inside, inboard by the steering section. There are some plastic rivet fasteners that are 1/4 turn. I typically use a little Phillips bit to get those things reset. Four fasteners out. Now, this guy's loose here and here. There's one more here. Now it should be able to come out. It tabs in forward. We need to pull it back and up. Series of tabs. Takes it out. Go for tank removal next. There are 2 friction fasteners right under these locations, and those fit into grommets, so we need to pull straight up. Now we'll remove these 2 forward tank bracket screws and the rear ones. Now our tank is loose. We'll need to pull it up, dislodge these two overflow and aerator hoses. Take the clamps off first, and then they should pop off. They're stubborn. Get some pliers, move them around their axes first, and then they break loose. Now gently turn over without pulling up. This is your fuel sender and fuel pump wire that needs to be unplugged. This is the lock. It goes forward and to the left. You press it in, pull it out, good to go. Disconnect the fuel line. So you pull up the lock, exposes this, press tab on one side, and it's got a matching one on the other. You have to press it in as far as it'll go, and then gently pull away. If you still have pressure in the line because you ran the bike recently, this will likely have a bunch of gas coming out. So make sure you have a rag under here so that you don't make a big mess. Your tank needs to go to the side now. There is a support here. If you lay it down on something, this will make a plane like this. It'll protect your fuel pump from being damaged. I like to set this on 2 front tires on a rear tire. That way it's supported and nothing won't break. This panel tabs out forward and down, back out, and then the lock between this panel and this panel tabs out downwards. Just has to be disengaged here first. So tab it out and then pull down, and it's out. One additional tab and catch on this side right here. That doesn't exist on the left side of the bike, only on this side. Everything has to come down first. We'll take 3 quarter turn fasteners out. One's joining the bottom of the 2 outer panels here. There's one here and right here under the nose. We'll grab a 10mm socket, remove this screw. There's another screw up here. It's all for the purpose of taking this panel assembly off the bike. And if we pull straight out, there's another friction fastener here going into a grommet. That's pretty much about it. We do have a parking light or a running light wire that routes over a retainer in this panel here. It rests here. Pick it up and move it over. And then we also have our signal wire that's here. We'll need to unplug it. If there's a signal in this panel, it has to come out. All the wiring's clear. All of my friction fasteners are clear. If you have frame sliders on, you'll need to clear those too. Once that's clear, there's a series of clips, tab and windows along here. We'll need to push forward. Before we push forward, we need to clear this black plastic engagement into the panel to actually make room to push forward, just like that. That all comes out. It's pretty simple. We'll repeat the procedure on the right side of the bike. Remember the wiring. Friction fastener out. Clear this guy. Now we'll remove the airbox. To do that, You need to remove the 10mm head screw here, and also on the other side. On this side, we have some sensitive wiring equipment. One of these is for your crank sensor trigger. Be careful around that, do not damage it. Once that's out, we can proceed to loosening the clamps that clamp the funnels that sit in the airbox into the throttle body. They are positioned, they are clocked differently from side to side. On the right side, you could access it through here. On the left side, you have to go in between here. I'm using a 4mm Allen on an extension. These are typically loose enough to do by hand. Now from the right side of the bike, I'll be removing some hoses. I'm going to start with this AIS Airbox hose. Clamp comes off. Let's actually remove this all together. We're getting rid of the AIS. Could unplug the pump and then slip it off this plastic keeper. Okay, we'll get rid of that portion a little bit later. Let's take this hose off. Now we're down here. This is a hose that leads from the airbox to the throttle bodies. Take the clamp off, rotate it, push it off. There's another hose down deep in there. It leads from the bottom of the airbox, to the crankcase vent. It is very difficult to get in there. It is especially pesky when the bike's hot. What I've done before is just loosen the clamp, and I was able to dislodge it when I pull up on the entire airbox. Now the airbox should be free. Take it off the throttle bodies. You just look at the axis of the throttle bodies and pull back, and then you could rotate upwards. And all right, I lost a sleeve to one of the clamps. I must have backed out the screw just a little bit too much. Let's do a quick recap of what we've taken off here. Loosened these clamps, took off the 10mm screws. We took off this hose, which goes to the AIS pump over here. That will be eliminated, and our AIS block off comes with a plug that plugs over this. This hose goes to your crankcase. It's a breather. It goes right there over that. And this hose here from the bottom of your throttle bodies goes here. Those two will be replaced. This one will be blocked off. Let's cover our throttle bodies so dust doesn't get in there for the time being. This is the perfect time to disconnect your O2 sensor. It's a 4-position Sumitomo plug here. You can identify it by tracing this heavily shielded 4-wire set going to your O2 sensor. We will be removing the exhaust. So at this point, just pry up on this tab here, disconnect this plug, and get it all the way over. It is tabbed in on retainers. There's a retainer here and here over the clutch cover. Pull them up, and it just comes off. You can press them back down if you'd like. This is free to come out. Jump up top, make sure that your connector is not in the way here. I want to make sure this connector doesn't get in the way of anything else, but don't push it into where the chain is. You can zip tie it or whatever you choose. All right, let's remove some more AIS components. The main component of that system is right here. And then also, if you swing around this way, we have a charcoal canister living here. All this stuff has to come off at this point. Since we are eliminating all of these components, the bike will have to be used in non-public road situations, such as closed course competition or track day use. And this enables us to get a lot of this stuff out of here. What I like to do is remove this one-way valve off of our aerator hose. Route it back in there. This can just be routed in through here. Still does its job. It's still routed or can be connected to our tank. But at this time, we've taken off this component that's part of the canister package. This wire here, I'm sorry, this hose here, it actually goes to, splits into two underneath the throttle bodies. Right down here, just took it off here. There's another connection. This is meant to suck back the fumes from the charcoal canister into the intake tract. This is also being eliminated. Our AIS block-off system has caps that go over these two nipples, so no worries there. And get in here with pliers, remove this clamp from this hose. Once we dislodge that hose, the AIS pump comes off. Put that to the side. You can focus on the valve cover. Let's put all this stuff to the side. There is a plate here with reeds in it. Please notice this stud that comes out of it. Pull up on it, flip it over. Notice the reeds. I'm going to remove these 4 screws here. All this stuff comes out. And it is quite dirty, so can't actually wipe it before we move forward. Use denatured alcohol or whatever your solvent of choice is, or you could just knock the grime off of it. More stuff will collect on this soon after you replace it, so no big deal there. We'll also be removing these components from the inside. Those are unnecessary at this point. So when I showed you this component that sits in there with the stud up, I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to point it down. And we're going to put it back in there. I'm going to reuse it because it has a nice seal on it. Now we're going to grab our TST Industries WORX plate, superimpose it over this hole, set up here on top of our valve cover. And these are the two caps that I was talking about. Come with the kit for AIS block off. These go over the nipples under here on the throttle body. Okay, now let's disassemble our airbox. These old covers go to the side. I have nice new covers we're going to use from the WORX package. I'm also going to ditch this restrictive filter. I kept my airbox screws in the airbox, but this whole side cover comes off with the screw boss, so I'm going to reconfigure that a little bit later. Okay, we'll put the OEM side covers on the side. We have the other side of the WORX package here. It's not going to go on just yet. Just want to put this cap over the top AIS hose position before we move any further. This is the last cap from our AIS block off kit. Just goes on here. You can clamp it if you choose. I typically don't. There's nothing but suction in here, so it shouldn't come off. All right. That screw that came out of the original setup, I'll put it in here for a placeholder. Let's break down all the other restrictive elements here. The snorkel needs to come out. From the factory, they are glued in with some sort of adhesive similar to this goop here. So you'll have a little bit more of a challenge to take them out if your bike is fully stock. And then, of course, you probably want to clean up the port. I actually don't have a mess here because I've done that in the past before this presentation. All right, and now let's grab these clamps off our OEM stacks. And as you can see here, there is still adhesive on these guys, so it'll be a little bit more challenging than that snorkel. I'm gonna grab a flathead. Rather not have to cut through the adhesive, I'd rather roll it back like this. This is polypropylene plastic. It actually doesn't allow adhesives to cure or bond onto the plastic in a molecular way. You can actually roll the adhesive off like this, kind of like bubble gum comes off a hard surface. I'm gonna grab this thing from the inside, try to move it around. Once enough of this seal breaks, it'll have a tendency to come out, and hopefully we could get a chain reaction of the adhesive coming off. Some of it got left behind, but at this point it's pretty easy to peel it off. Okay, got the outside pretty nice. And let's check the inside. The inside still has a little bit of that adhesive on it. You don't want it coming loose at some point, going down into your intake. So let's make sure we get it all off. Now I'm going to get the funnels actually installed in the airbox. The longer curved one goes in the deeper position on the left side of the bike. The shorter one goes on the right side. We have done some bikes without the use of any locking agent, and then some with this locking agent goop. This basically just provides a little bit more seal and a little bit more protection against vibratory removal, I think. We have not seen to this day any difference in the performance between these two. We have not seen them slip or come out or anything like that, but I would say I recommend using goop to get these things fixed in place. That will basically prevent any vibratory and rotational removal. You don't want to put too much on there, because then it'll be really, really difficult to take these things back off should you ever choose to go back to stock, or you're selling your bike and you want to sell some of the components off of it. So I'm going to apply just a little bit and then spread it around the rim. Do not want to get this stuff on the threads. If you get it on the threads, forget about it. It's not coming back off. Looks like I need just a little bit more. Stuff can get pretty messy. If you need to clean up some of this, please do it before it cures. It becomes a pain in the butt after it cures. You'll need a harsh solvent like lacquer thinner or something like that. And we'll get this seated in there. Each one of these funnels actually has a little step in diameter to fit inside this hole and center itself. You'll need to clock it, and by that I mean orient it around the axis properly. The tip for that is that you want to be able to see the WORX logo just a little bit, and you want this rim to be protruding out over the surface by about 3 to 4 millimeters. And that will give you good engagement, or proper positioning rather. And then we'll just spin the other side of the funnel on until we get it tight. This will have a tendency to move the whole thing around its axis. I need to go back to where it was the optimal setup. You could either use a really large adjustable wrench or some non-locking, non-plier type device. If you have an open-ended wrench this size, that's going to be awesome. I could not find one locally, so we just milled one out. Key here is not to over tighten this. Get it seated, engaged, preloaded. Make sure everything has no gaps in it. If you use the goop, you'll see the goop seeping out, and you'll have flange to airbox contact, and that's pretty much where we want to leave it. I'll go for the shorter one, doing it in a faster fashion with less commentary. Looking good. All right. I am going to blow this thing out quickly with air, and I'll be right back. Let's get it closed up and rebuilt and ready to put back in the bike. On this side we have the self-threading screws. All screws accounted for. Let's now drop our air filter in. This is the MWR racing air filter. Comes with our WORX pack. And the left side cover caps that off. I'm going to machine thread screws. Okay. Now we have our clamps that come with our funnels. I like to position them with access from the top, from the side of the bike. We use a flathead screwdriver. I'll muck this one up. Just want to get enough engagement on this clamp against the surface of the funnel so that it doesn't come off, but the springy teeth are still able to expand and pop onto your throttle body. All right, that looks good. I can now transfer this back over to the bike. I had these in for safekeeping. I'm going to take them out. And we'll basically go in the reverse order of disassembly on this. I'm going to ditch my rag that was clogging the throttle bodies. And let's see. Just have to make sure that this hose can actually get onto its connection location there. If it helps you, you can take out the catch can for the coolant. I typically just work from this side, but it does get cumbersome. You can take this out. It's already unscrewed. You can get access from this side. I like to rotate it in, making sure the rear bosses are aligned with the slots that they're supposed to fit into. Ensuring that my hose is actually over the nipple it fits onto on the crankcase. At this point, I'm actually able to see it through here, manipulate it with my hand, and I can get it on that nipple before I engage the whole airbox onto the bike. Okay, I actually got it on all the way. Now with this hand, I'm gonna push on the airbox so that the throttle bodies and my funnels come together very gently, making sure things are coaxial in each funnel. I want to make sure that everything goes down towards the intake ports in a parallel fashion. You can wiggle it around a little bit. It does have a little bit of give. Once you bottom it out, it's pretty much as far as you can go. And you'll start noticing that the funnels don't move any further past the stop point. So we're just going to keep them there. And we're going to grab our flathead screwdriver, get our clamp to show up here. So get our screwdriver on it and start tightening down. We're clamping over nylon plastic. Make sure you exercise caution, do not over tighten it. Just want to make a seal. The rest of it is suspended via the intake port flanges and also these screws back here for the airbox in the back of the airbox. All right, before we move on, I'm gonna get this hose clamp on down onto the breather hose. Make sure it doesn't vibrate off. And then I'm going to get this Airbox 2 throttle body hose on. And also get that hose clamp situated. Now all of our connections to the airbox are done. Let's keep going. Now, since we're in the vicinity, I'm going to swap the stock ECU for a WORX Pack ECU. This would be sort of the scenario if you got the core sent to you and then you send another ECU back. Otherwise, you would probably just send us your ECU before you do all this and not have the ECU here in this location and just put it back in after we reprogram it for you. All right, let's go ahead and take the exhaust down now. First, I'm just going to loosen this bolt, loosen my clamp under here. There's a fastener in here that will just come right out. Vastly easier to do it with the rear set off. I'm going to save some time and just not remove the rear set. There's another one on the other side. And now we have the actual nuts on the head studs. At this point, we'll need to support the header up here. All right. That first screw that I just left sort of hanging, I'm gonna back out the nut, slip the exhaust off of it, push forward on the whole thing. Your aft section should be loose enough to take the canister off. And now it's just a matter of wiggling the header off. And it comes off pretty easily. All right, let's now install our WORX Pack exhaust header. First, let's make sure that we still have the exhaust seals in the head. If they've popped out, I'm gonna have to put them back in. But there's a good time to check the condition. If they are not good condition, we need to replace them. If they're okay, and I know these are, they haven't been clamped down many times and they were replaced not too long ago. I'm just gonna put them back in. This is a trick I use to keep them in the head while I perform my assembly. Put a little bit of grease on here. I use lithium grease. And the surface tension of that grease keeps it in there for me without popping out. And then the grease will burn off and go away. All right, so I have both of my exhaust seals in there. Advance my flanges and orient them like this. All right. Once the primaries are in the head, get the nuts on, and then I will use a torque wrench to get these evenly torqued, going side to side, making sure that I exert the same pressure, same torque on each side, on each stud. I use 15 foot-pounds. I think the R3 book varies from that a little bit, but I've been using 15 foot-pounds for years. And that seems to be my happy spot here. And that's it for the header. I actually have my mid pipe, my canister pre-installed together from the time I did on the dyno with this bike. So I'm just gonna assemble it together in one piece. Keep it loose for now. There's one more mount down here. This is vastly easier when the rear sets out. I'm going for time savings here. All right, let's get our tank back on the bike. I'm gonna start my fuel line. Make sure the lock is in the up position. Up meaning exposing these windows. Slowly press onto the fuel pump until you hear it click, and then the lock goes back and engages over those windows. I'm gonna grab this plug for your fuel sender and fuel pump. Arrange the lock towards the front left of the bike. Plug it in till it clicks. And now we have our overflow. Now we'll position our brackets so that tank can actually be screwed back in. I'm going to take one more gander underneath, making sure that there's no chance for my fuel line to be kinked anywhere or pressed on by any other component. This is very important. You do not want your fuel line to be kinked. It may drop your fuel pressure to the injectors and you'll have a lean condition. That's no good. Everything looks good. I'm going to screw it back on. At this point, I have installed all of the WORX components. Everything from this point forward to the end of the job is just the reverse order of disassembly, which you've seen me perform. So if you go in the reverse order, you should be good to go. I'm just gonna quickly start the bike, make sure the pump primes, make sure everything runs properly. This way we know we don't have a problem and we can actually build the bike back. All right, let's not make too much stink. I'm happy. I'm gonna build this thing back up, and then we'll show you the second generation bike. All right, here we have the second generation bike. Mechanically, it is the same as the first generation bike as far as the components go that we will be replacing. So the only differences are the breakdown and rebuild of the plastics. So I will really just be focusing on showing you those nuances for the configuration of the airbox, change of ECU, the exhaust. You will just have to refer to the previous generation bike video that we have. I'm going to remove the seat. I'm going to remove this panel by the removal of two fasteners here. This seat comes off, these panels come off, and then we'll move forward. We have a series of push fasteners that have to have the center pressed in to withdraw them. There's one here, there's one here from the inside, there's one here. Now let's think about removing this panel here. This all comes off in one piece. So what I'll do is get the inside components out first. Remove the center shroud here, 4 screws, 2 on either side, and then we'll move forward. So now I will be disconnecting some of the wiring that is on this panel here. We're going to remove it from the routing guides because all of that plastic will be coming down. Then I will remove this fastener, the other fasteners that hold this panel to the bike, and then we'll push that forward, dislodge it from the clips, and subsequently take it off. At this point, we will dislodge the 2 remaining fasteners, which are friction fit fasteners. There are studs that go into rubber grommets here and here. Pull these guys outboard. And now we'll slide this whole panel forward to unclip it from its tab and window closures. And it comes off in its entirety, nicely like this. On this side of the bike, we're pretty much repeating the whole process again. Now here comes the trickiest part in this whole process. This tank cover breaks down into 2 components, forward and aft. This guy is very tricky to pop off as a series of tabs, and then also these 1/4 turn fasteners here. You could be a brute and jam a screwdriver in there, maybe under a rag, and with a rag over it, and try not to damage your paint. Or if you have one of these handy, it's a squeegee, I'll go in there pretty nicely and break those connections for you. I'll show you how to do that. First, let's get these 1/4 turn fasteners out of here. And now let's break the tab connections. This really needs to come up and towards the rear a little bit. So I support it up in the front and try to progressively work across as I get those tabs to dislodge from their windows. And working very gently, I remove this guy, and then using a 10mm socket, we'll remove these 4 screws here. All right, so this cover now has a single friction fastener that goes into a grommet just right below here. So we'll pull up and back. And that's it. From this point forward, the installation of the WORX Pack on the 2nd gen bike is exactly the same as we've shown you on the 1st gen bike. As you can see here, we've already eliminated some of the AIS components. So this bike is not really apples to apples, but if you have a bone stock bike, at this point you will just need to refer to the 1st generation bike method and you'll be able to get this thing going.